We are back, and welcome to Ark Republic. And we are in conversation with Dr. Sherice Janaye. How are you?
Hey girl.
Hey. Now we are going to try this one more again. For those of you, because we didn't release it, didn't know, we actually did a whole thing on the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef when it first came out. But I decided not to put it out, and I'm actually glad. And I messaged Dr. Sherice Janaye and said, you know what, I'm glad I didn't put it out because I was watching or it was like maybe a day or two after Kendrick Lamar did the Kid and Friends pop out, and she said, why? And I said, I think we just have much more to talk about in terms of what is the significance? How do we look at this? What does this mean? So with that being said, first we have to actually lay down the law in terms of who we be, who we be. In this conversation, I would say largely the Kendrick Lamar and Drake conversation has been a male centered one. But a lot of people don't know half of hip hop are women. Actually, I got my start in being a media person, writing about hip hop and writing in hip hop publications back in the early 90s. So, I am hip hop. That's it, period, point blank. And I think we have a lot to say about it. So, but also, I was raised in Los Angeles during the height of the crack era, which then spawned the gang era that we know it in LA. And I grew up in a neighborhood. I grew up in a Crip neighborhood. This is how we talk in LA. I grew up in a Crip neighborhood. On the other side, it was a blood neighborhood. So and at the height of the crack gang, uh, um, how we want to call it, pandemic, if you want to call it like that, you had to, as a youth, whether you were in a gang, affiliated, or whatever, you had to move through the streets and maneuver them and know exactly what neighborhoods and territories you were in because the language changed, the clothes changed, the movements changed, everything changed. So I wanted to, to say that. However, even though I was raised in a Crip neighborhood, and I went, the high school I went to was very much. I remember back in 1989. I am dating myself. Yes, I am. There was a guy. This is how intense I would say the gang culture got in LA. He wore a burgundy belt. I remember this, and he half of the school chased him through the cafeteria, and he ran and hid for cover in the main building. So I grew up at the height of like gang wars, and these gang wars and gang culture changed dramatically when crack hit. Maybe I'll get a little bit in that. So Sharice, tell me about yourself before we start this conversation.
Yeah, so it's so funny that you say this. So I think you're an Xer and I'm a millennial, right? So
Yep.
you lived in the boom, right? And I lived in all the remnant, right? So I lived in I lived in families now being split apart, right? Or now this reality of kids growing up with grandparents because parents are cracked out or gone, right? Or the whole idea, my let me say it this way, my family was seen in many ways, although my dad did dabble. My family was seen in many ways as the upstanding Huxtables in the hood because my parents were married, right? And there were all of these different family configurations around me because of crack. So we're talking about a neighborhood that started off with primarily, two family household. I mean, two parent households that basically disintegrated in many ways because of this epidemic. And so I grew up in a neighborhood that was called the Murder Dubs in East Oakland on East 22nd Street. And the reason it was called the Murder Dubs is that we in that section of East Oakland had the highest murder rate at the time. Oakland was already rated very, I mean, up from on the national charts in the 90s. But when it comes to my block in particular, it became so bad, Kaya, that they had to put a median in my street or the street right over next to me. I grew up on East 22nd. So on East 21st, there was a median put in so that there was only one way into the neighborhood and one way out because of all of the drug activity. Right. I had to pay attention to movements, right? If shoestrings or if old shoes were on a wire, or on a wire that lets you know that drugs were sold on that street, right? There are all of these signals that you had to pay attention to. My parents were so nervous about me going to my neighborhood, even elementary school, that my mother had us to be bussed out, me and my sister bussed out from a public school perspective, into a to Glenview Elementary outside of my neighborhood. And then for middle school and high school, I did not go to any high school, any public high school in Oakland, because of this remnant of this gang culture that was in many ways, and my area is not around Crips or Bloods, but really around neighborhoods, right? The murder dubs, the dirty 30s, the right, all of these different neighborhoods, and Funktown and all these things. And if people from those areas started coming into your neighborhood, as you said, you would know you were up for really in many ways a gang war. And my father played a huge role in that. And I say that because my father was seen as an OG. He had dabbled in drugs, knew the culture and knew the language. And when my father came out on the street, everybody knew to chill out, right? Everybody, there was a level of respect that people had for my father that in many ways would quell things in the neighborhoods. And so I grew up in many ways in the culture, which is why I think this beef between the two of them, in many ways was emblematic to what I saw in my childhood, of the darker skinned, more hood connected Kendrick Lamar, in comparison to the mulatto or the lighter skinned Drake, who's trying to figure out his blackness, right? I saw those things playing out in my neighborhoods and in my adolescence all the time.
And thank you for giving context. I think it's important that we provide context so people know, one, that what we're talking about, we are talking from lived experiences, and it's so much more nuanced than what I want to say was presented in the Kenan, like the pop out thing. I'm so glad you said that so people could understand. Los Hollywood, Los Angeles, Black Hollywood, and Black Los Angeles are four different entities. All right.
Say it.
They
Say
are
it.
four different experiences. And a lot of people, I think, conflate or get all of them confused and think they all coexist as one, right? So my family are migrants to Los Angeles, but my mother and father are probably some of the later migrants into California, because my family actually migrated into the Bay Area. So we might be related, Sherice. And that is because a lot of people don't know, when you migrated into California, if you weren't already there and a Black person, you actually had to go to the north in order to get into the state. And you had to present emancipation papers. They were called red papers. So my mother's side, from Louisiana, which is if you know anything about the Great Migration and the mass exodus that happens with Black folks in America, for Louisianians, California became a natural migratory route that a lot of people took. Hence, some of your people are from Louisiana. So in Los
All of
Angeles, all of
all
them.
of
Okay. Yeah. So in Los Angeles, you have a lot of Louisiana representation. And it's interesting you talked about the dark skin and the light skin, because it's also presented in Los Angeles. You have a lot of those Louisiana ideas of how close in proximity you are to looking white gives you more access into more corporate or more economic ventures in Los Angeles. So my parents moved to LA in the 70s. My father's from Mississippi. And if you and there's a lot of politics between, if you're from Mississippi, I remember there was a guy who said, I'm from Mississippi and I'm so tired of people thinking that all things that come from Mississippi is fucked up, right? So my father is this, tall Black man. We're moving to LA in the 70s. Gang culture has already started. I mean, we first we moved, as most migrants do. We went and moved into my uncle's house, my uncle Don, who's the Republican. Then I remember us moving to Inglewood, which You know, we're talking, this is a blood territory, but then we move out and then we move in what is considered a Crip territory. But my father was the stoic, one of the, actually, there were several fathers on our block. We lived in what would be considered a middle class Black community. There were several, there was Mr. Dickerson, I know the names. There were, down the street, there was a Black cop. My father was the beat your ass father. You don't mess with Mr. Shivers. So we had this, and my mother was a teacher at Washington Preparatory High School. So you know, and even though my parents could have moved out and bust out their children, they're very conscientious in terms of keeping us there, because they come from this movement in terms of this Black power movement, that in order to empower your Black community, you must remain and you must do the work, because a lot of Black people left. So I wanted to situate that. And as well, I wanted to also say is that I was a lifeguard, which is very rare for a Black person. But in LA, there was a program, there was an aquatic program that was geared toward Black and Latino communities, because we didn't have pools. And as you guys know, with Bruce's Beach, we were kicked off of the beaches, so there weren't a lot of aquatic recreational spaces. So I'm part of that. And when I was 19, I applied for this has relevance to this conversation. I applied for to get promoted from lifeguard to what was it called? Um, but it was like vice president. I forgot it's senior lifeguard, that was called. So I'm like second in command. I'm right under the pool manager. Well, in order for me to get that promotion, I had to move out of my neighborhood and go into a pool that needed it, and that was in Compton at
Mhm.
Campanella Park, which is Campanella Park Pyru Blood. So a lot of people don't know that if you call yourself a Pyru, you are actually the member of a blood gang. Pyru means blood in Swahili, and that's what a lot of back in the 70s and the late 60s, what these Black revolutionaries would say and refer to themselves as Pyru, like in Bloods, right? So I worked at Campanella Park and I learned about blood culture, the Pyru culture specifically. So pockets of Compton has a very stronghold. But if you know LA is largely a Crip territory, right? Bloods and Pyrus occupy certain pockets. But like you said, it is actually, gangs are actually neighborhood based too, as well. So you have something like Hoover Crips. This is like there's a whole Hoover Street, right? You have Hoover Crips, you have neighborhood Crips, you have rolling 60s, rolling 80s, bounty hunter Bloods. You have all of these different, I used to know them all, and they all have gang signs because you had to know where you were. So let's get to this Kid and Friends. All right, let's go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, let's get, because I think that this foundation is important though, right? Because if we work backwards from Kendrick's pop out, Kendrick's pop out was in Inglewood, right? Wasn't
Bloods. Mm-hmm.
what was in Inglewood with the Bloods, right? He
Mm-hmm.
wore this red, he wore this red, he wore this red hoodie, red hat, right? With a huge Jesus piece, right? In the pop out, all he did was play They're Not Like Us over and over and over again and build momentum, right? Because it was really setting this, it was really what he was, I think what he was really trying to say is that this culture that we've spent the time talking about, or laying the foundation, is that Drake is not like us in that is not his upbringing, that is not his experience, that is not his what he that's not what he's come from. And although that culture has been demonized, and it's been fracturing, and it's been violent, and it's been all those things, there's a kindred spirit that upbringing gives you, that understanding gives you, that a Drake can never understand, right? because
That's right.
because because those lived experiences of having to know the gang signs, of having to know where you are, of understanding, oh shit, now that I'm this lifeguard, I got to go back to Compton and now be in Compton, but I live in a Crip neighborhood. So how is this going to work out for me as being this leader in this environment when I have to go back to a Crip neighborhood, right? And so I think that's the nuance in many ways that's been lost in having these conversations about this Drake Kendrick Lamar beef is that Drake is trying to find blackness, whereas Kendrick couldn't escape it.
Oh, that's a very good point. And let me say this. Let me me working in and let me say I'm being real chill about it. And I know Dr. Janaye often tries to encourage me to push what I am behind the scenes because I am the turn up queen. Let me give you a story because it wasn't easy. Being in growing up on the west side and going to the east side, because that's another thing a lot of people don't know as well. So in LA, not only do you have the color, the color ism and the what do you call it, the pigmentocracy that we talk
Yeah, and
about,
color
but you also
that
have
plays out, right?
location. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you also have location. Black people could not live largely on the west side of Central Avenue is this corridor that demarcates the east side of Los Angeles from the west side. And it was not until after the Watts riots that were in 65, the
Mhm.
1965 Watts riots, where white flight happened, right? And black people began to move more west. So we live on the west side, but I live 7 minutes, I grew up 7 minutes from Compton, 5 minutes from Watts of drive. So I used to ride my bike, like those bikes you see on them things, of little beach cruisers, and I would ride my bike from west side to the east side to Compton, definitely for the first year. And I was not a welcomed person, even though I was a young lady. I was not welcome. I had to earn my place in there. And I'm going to tell you one of the things in which I had to earn. This year, LA County decided to charge people to come into the pool to swim when it had been free. It had always been free, right? So a lot of people didn't like it. There was this local guy. His name was Cuckoo. I don't know if Cuckoo is still alive. I think Cuckoo has passed, but Cuckoo was known to like really do crazy stuff. So Cuckoo robbed the pool. And he thought that I was the one who snitched him out. I did not snitch him out. I'm not going to say who did. So after he got out of jail, he would then walk the park and intimidate us. So I would call the park police, who we call quarter time. And if you know LA lingo, cops are called halftime. We called park police quarter time because they was, what I'm saying, they were like they were like basically top flight security for the police. That's how we view them. So the park police said, hey, we can't really do anything. If he hasn't done anything to you, we can't do anything. I'm like, but he's going to do something. I know he is, right? And so this one particular day, I don't know, something happened and I called my dad, all right? And within 5 minutes, my dad and a whole bunch of people from my side of town came to that park. And my father sat there all day and he was my security. And I remember he stood in the middle of that park. He said, this is me and mine. And if anybody mess with me and mine, meaning his daughter and me, we're going to have some problems. All right. And he sat down and he protected his daughter. So these are the things that you had. And after that you want to talk about the smoke cleared. And I was cool. So I started being invited to all the bloodshed. I would go, they used to have football games in Luders Park. And, next thing you know, I'm also even being invited to Grape Street, which is which is not Bloods, but the Grape Street Crips, which is in, what is it? It's not Nickerson Gardens, the Jordan Downs. Jordan Downs and Watt. So I'm going all this other, and I'm also doing community work too at this time. So I want to earmark to say, you asked me a question in the pre-show and asked if Kendrick Lamar is a Blood. I don't know if he's a Blood, but he reads to me as an affiliate. An affiliate is somebody who grows up in the proximity of whatever gang. Your cousin a gang member, your brother might be a gang member, your daddy, your uncles and them might bang, but you were the kid that they told don't do this shit. So there was even, see, this is another thing people don't even understand. They think that like gangs like subsume the Black community, which is bullshit. I think Dame and I talk about this a lot. But growing up, you would have gang members that would be like, man, don't do this shit. You go to school, you get your education. We want you to whatever. So it seems like to me, Kendrick Lamar is that person that was that in his community and in his family. So what does that mean? So when he becomes successful, then that means it's success of the community. But in growing up, and this is when you said he got emotional, he lost people, people got killed, the police still fucked with him. People were locked up when they shouldn't have been locked up. You still suffer the consequences of when you're living and existing in these areas. So I wanted to give that
But
context.
I think that's at the heart. I think that's at the heart of this beef between him and Drake, is the fact that this is real for me, right? That being able to have this pop out in Inglewood, to have all these different gangs on the stage with me, that everybody could come and coalesce around my success, right? That has become our success, that everybody could stand on the stage, that I could be able to call off a ceasefire for a day, or I have this level of influence. Drake, you don't understand that, and you are hopping on this bandwagon of the violence of it or the clout of it by running to the Atlanta rappers or to Memphis to Memphis rappers to get this clout without living it, right? And I guess and really in my defense of Drake is, but that wasn't Drake's choice. In many ways, it was Drake's mother's choice, right? Because Drake's mother was white, and she removed Drake from that environment. She moved Drake up to Canada so that Drake would not have, in many ways, the influence that his father could have provided in that way. And then he was lost in many ways. Drake was on Degrassi from Disney, right? I mean, he was as you said several times, he was an industry baby, right? He was
Mhm.
not
Before he started rapping, he was an industry baby.
right. Before he started rapping, he was a industry personality, right? An industry personality, but in many ways, this industry personality, because he has all the skill sets and the swagger and the remnant, because his daddy is still this hood nigga from Memphis. That's just who his daddy is, and it's in Drake's blood. No matter how much his mother tried to pull him away from that, but it left Drake in many ways searching and wondering and trying to pull at a faction or a part of himself that he's trying to connect with. And I think that over time, that the love that Drake has, I mean, that the love that Kendrick has for the unity that he was able to provide for that stage in that pop out, I believe that over time that same love he will then be able to have for Drake, because in many ways Kendrick should really be should feel sorry for Drake, right? More so than being antagonizing towards him, because Drake, in many ways, as you've said several times and we've talked about, is in many ways the tragic mulatto, right? He's
Bring
no, no,
that out.
no, because he's
I was trying
certainly
to leave that one out, but yes, I
no,
have said
no,
that.
he
I have.
is, but
Hmm.
I think, but the
But
reason I
the
think
reverse of it. Hmm.
but the reason I think that we need to discuss it, Kaya, is that there are so many people in our Black community that are Black adjacent, and they're Black adjacent not from their own choosing. And now, because they're Black adjacent, they have to navigate this space, and us teasing them about it or us pointing our fingers at them about it is not going to help them navigate the space anymore. Now, let me also say that Drake has highly benefited off of being adjacent. That Drake has in many ways. Let me say it to you this way: Drake, if we think about Drake's earlier music, none of it was gang, gang, beat him up, bummer, bummer, shoot him in the head. It only became that way when folks like Kendrick or other Negroes that grew up a lot rougher decided that he should not be inside of rap because he didn't have this experience. Because before, Drake was rapping about how he got his heart broke by a woman, right? Like that was what his messaging was.
But
And
let me.
so go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
no, 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 no. I want to get, and I'm gonna get. I want to get more into Drake, but you said something that I think is really important that a lot of people are missing about Black Los Angeles, right? You remember when I said there's a difference between Black Hollywood and Black Los Angeles. Now there are some places, moments where they intersect. And the reason why they intersect is because Black Hollywood is so small and has been segregated from Hollywood, that Black people trying to have careers in that industry often have to live, or historically have more so lived in the Black LA community than most. Now, maybe not so much. So I want to say that.
Well, yeah, but there's
But
a large area of them in Baldwin Hills, right? Because they were redlined out of certain areas. And so if you're talking about Black Hollywood, the highest up they were living was Baldwin Hills, unless they were back down the hill, right? Like that's
right.
just reality of it.
Right, yeah, Baldwin Hills and Windsor Hills, right? These are the areas. Baldwin Hills and Windsor Hills are this mountainous range that is on the west side of Crenshaw, that goes up.
Yeah,
And up
that's what we
until
would
the
call up the hill, right?
uh
Us from Northern California, we would call that up the
up the
hill,
hill
right? Or down the hill,
or
right?
down the
Because like you said, those two mountain ranges or those
hmm
two
yeah
those two peaks are the
hmm
only places that Black Hollywood lived. And if you didn't, you lived down the hill. You lived
hmm
down the hill back
hmm
towards Crenshaw. That's
hmm
just
hmm yeah
it. That's just where you lived.
Right. And if you were affluent, like if you were a prominent doctor or a prominent professor or a person or a prominent business person, you lived there. And so up until the early 90s, that's where a lot of Black Hollywood, Black athletes lived and partied, and that was the place to be. And then when and it wasn't a choice. It was because of the segregation that is very strict in Los Angeles, was and still is. Now it's more of economics, but economics, of course, we know is tied to race. So that's where they were. So I wanted just to say that, and you understand, and me making this next point. Another thing I think is important to understand: Inglewood is the last concentrated population
Of
of
Black.
Black families, single owning. This was told to me because there's a huge fight on gentrification in this part of Inglewood. So Inglewood has different sections. There's a west side of Inglewood that's white, but then there's the Inglewood is on the west side of LA, but the more eastern part of Inglewood, which is where the Forum is located, all right, where the Black people live, this is where the Black middle class and the upper middle class people lived, is going through gentrification, and it is the last pocket of the largest concentration of single Black owned households, not in the country, not in the region, but in the
But in
world.
the world. Yep.
In the world. So
I
there
have
is a
cousins that live there that are fighting. I have
tooth
cousins,
and
Taisha,
nail.
that are fighting tooth and nail to keep their houses in that area.
Yes. And so I did a whole thing with a brother who lives in the area and has been fighting about gentrification, but how these voices are left out. So that was a significance about it happening in the Forum. For those of you who don't know, the Forum is where the LA Lakers played. And before they moved to the Staples Center, which is now called the Crypto Center.
Crypto Center.
Yeah, weird name, but I know it's a cryptocurrency. And then after the Lakers sold it, it actually was like a mega church. And then Madison Square Garden bought the Forum and became an entertainment space to give people context. So it being in Inglewood, one, Kendrick Lamar and being a blood affiliated, two, the economic struggle that Black people are having and the significance, because those Black people living in Inglewood would make and break the political elections, in many ways.
And
So
some say to that very fact is that without Inglewood, Karen Bass wouldn't have become mayor.
Oh, most definitely, because if you're from LA, Karen Bass is a West Side chick. This is what we say. And like she's like the West of the West. So a lot of people didn't even know Karen Bass because she really just didn't bang in like the regular communities. You know what I'm saying? She married a Latino, she lived on the West Side. And also here's the color politics. She's a fair-skinned woman, so she maneuvers and moves through these spaces really differently. I know it might sound insane to the person who's listening, but that's very important. I
Light
wanted to
skin with that nappy fro. That's why she wear
yeah.
that nappy fro all the time. Right. No.
No, that isn't. No, I'm about to say that's a thing. That is totally a thing in LA.
Right. That's why she's wearing the nappy fro, so that her lighter skin, right? This idea of colorism built on this pigmentological scale that we talk about, so that hair immediately pulls her towards her people, right? That's a real thing, right?
And that was something that was practiced during the 1960s and 70s with the Black Panther. You had all these fair-skinned women with this certain type of texture of hair. They would wear afros in order to signify that they are part of Black culture, right? So that's important. I also want to say what's important in understanding, what's going on is that Juneteenth has been a historical celebration in Los Angeles for decades because after
Please.
yes, because after the Louisiana migrants, you have a large amount of Texans that migrated to the city too. So you have these Louisiana Texan folk, bringing this celebration, like this emancipatory celebration. So Kendrick having it on Juneteenth also has a lot of significance as well. And him saying, so I want to say it's like the culture, right? Two things. As an Angelino, I am so tired that people frame Black Los Angeles as gang culture. That is not Black Los Angeles. Gang culture is a result of Black people in Los Angeles trying to protect themselves. Gangs started in LA because cops in LA were so vicious against white people that a subsection of Black men who were considered criminals, and also people who are just coming from the Vietnam War, were tired of being policed and surveilled and abused. So they created a movement called Community Revolution in Progress, hence Crips. All right. And so this is a creation of surviving in a very racist, very violent Los Angeles, right? But it is not Black LA. Black LA is so more expansive. So as an Angelino, I really am am blown and over people thinking that gang culture is the center of Black LA. Black migration is the center of the Black LA experience, right? Secondly, people have like the gang, but gang culture, and I used to be saddened. It used to be a mournful amazement that when I would travel the world, and I've traveled many parts of the world, that the thing that migrates the most out of LA is the gang culture. And if you know anything about when cultures migrate, they transform, and often they become caricaturized too as well. So I think also what Kendrick is also talking about is that this gang culture is way more nuanced, has a lot of more historical significance. It's much more than dope selling, bitches, hoes, drinking 40s and all this other bullshit that mainstream media tries to purport. Let me get on Drake's ass very quickly, right? In terms of, I don't give Drake grace. As Sherice knows, I don't give him not now one grace, because my position with Drake is that I call him an industry plant. Let's keep it real. That's what I've called him. He's an industry plant because he's been, you so aptly put it, he's been in the industry since he was a kid. And what we know with all this stuff that's been coming out with the industry, and I'm not talking from a person outside of it. I used to be an entertainment reporter. I was an entertainment. That was my first thing. And an entertainment reporter, that was my first heavy hitting career, right? And an editor was in the entertainment industry, which is Hollywood. You are trained, you are groomed, and you are expected to perform a certain way. This did not escape Drake, right? And so I think not only did his mother move him out of, or move him into a space where he was disconnected from his father and understanding his father's experience as a Black man in the South, right? But also, she's also an industry mother, which is also known to use their children for certain levels of exploitation because she's making her living off of her kid. And I'm not saying that this is not conspiracy theory. This is usually 9 times out of 10 what is happening when you have children who are athletes, who are singers, who are actors, right? So I want to say that. What gets me about Drake, which is and Kendrick Lamar has his problem because we're gonna talk about that. What gets me about Drake is that at what point, because you said that it was the hip hop industry that pushed him because he wasn't thug enough, right? But he grown enough to make conscientious decisions about how he presents himself. And so I don't believe it was necessarily the pressure of him wanting to fit in so he could be considered Black. I think it was the pressure of him wanting to have a certain status in this very Black place, that he feels like he has to present this Blackness, but he doesn't necessarily ascribe to the Blackness. It is part of his role as an actor. Does that make sense? Right.
No, I
So he
hear.
could take it off. It's like it's a suit. It's a suit for him. Right. So he could take it off. He could take it on. Some spaces he could be considered multiracial. Some spaces he could be considered a Black man. Some spaces he could be considered a Jewish man. He has the option, right? And I think that's what Kendrick Lamar is also saying, is that you've presented this multi-faced person because you have these options to negotiate and navigate, whereas I don't have those.
And I don't disagree. I don't disagree with Kendrick about the fact that Drake has them, but I don't think that Drake is running away from them. If we think about Drake, I mean, Drake runs through black skinned girls like it's nobody's business. I mean, Drake, if we look at Drake and who he's dated prominently or that we know of, right? They're all dark skinned. Like my whole thing is when it comes to Drake, it's very obvious he's searching. And that's to me. To me, he's searching. In his lyrics, he's searching. He's searching for acceptance. He is searching for belonging. He is searching for being fully being fully situated. And I guess what I'm saying is that the first place he saw some level of that he saw some level of attraction or being able to be situated was amongst these black rappers who had more of these nefarious types of backgrounds. 2 Chains and all of these other ones. But why did they graft him and pull him in? Because of, like you said, the access that Drake has had from an industry perspective. So putting Drake on helped them, right? But in many ways, it also it in many ways helped Drake find his clique or his crew or find a way to feel in someone embedded. I don't think Drake takes his blackness on and off because he chooses to take it on and off. I think that he's been conditioned to do so, conditioned to take his blackness on and off since he's been a young child. And I say that because his name is Aubrey. I mean, what black child do you know named Aubrey, right? The fact that he prefers to go by Drake than by Aubrey, right? It just speaks to the fact that from an identity perspective, he is searching and he is pulling. And I do agree with Kendrick that Kendrick doesn't have the ability to be as fluid in his identity that Drake does. The question I really have then is that Drake has made these conscious decisions and he has to live with these conscious decisions. But the idea of Drake, of the idea of Kendrick being mad at Drake for having the decisions, to me is where it's ludicrous. Yeah, it's unfair, Kendrick, that Drake has these choices. And yes, it allows Drake to have industry grace and access that you would never have. But that's not Drake's fault. That has everything to do with how the society is set up.
I think that's a good point. We are all in systems. I think there's 2 things. One, we all want acceptance, right? We all want to be a part of a community and a collective, right? We all want acceptance. And in the words of Pac, I just live in this world. I didn't make it. So I'm going to get on Drake's ass. Why the fuck, and I'm going to use that word, why did he use Pac in the AI voice to diss Kendrick? Let me tell you how that's a slap in the face, not just for hip hop, but also for freedom fighters. Because one of the things, Pac represents, being in these actually maybe 3 worlds. He was in the street life, somewhat. He was an artist. He was in hip hop, but he came through revolutionary struggles and progress with his mother, his father, his stepfather in the Black Panther Party. So to use this person in order to do that to Kendrick Lamar was an absolute cultural sin. That Drake made that decision. That which questions exactly to me, are you really truly interested in being in this Black space when you're using one of the quote unquote blackest rappers we had alive in order to diss somebody who is known as being one of the most recent MCs to really try to weave these narratives of consciousness back into hip hop, when a lot of the hip hop is so commercialized? I don't even know. One, I don't know what they're saying. And two, when I hear what they're saying, I'm like, I can't believe this. This is crazy. But let me tell you from a systemic perspective why Drake is very problematic. Like, and let me say, we're gonna get on Kendrick Lamar too as well. Why does Drake use Atlanta rap? Well, first, he's pulled in by Cash Money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Young Money, Cash Money, which is New Orleans, right? Then but if we're gonna go along with the Not Like Us, and then Kendrick has this whole thing about how he goes to Atlanta and he uses the artists in Atlanta. Atlanta for a long time was considered not only just the quote unquote black Mecca, right? It's also considered the entertainment Mecca for black folk. And trap music dominated. So him going to Atlanta and using trap artists in order to, or they're all trap artists, I believe, or
Most
people,
are,
yeah,
but I just feel
that is very intentional. However,
yeah, but I think that's just like a country person going to Nashville to go get country sound, right? I think
no.
it's akin to the I think it's akin to the same thing. I don't think it's different in that. I think that is it criminal? Is it let me say it to you this way. I don't think that anything that you're saying is wrong, Kaya. I think that it's problematic all the way around. What I guess I'm saying is that Drake to if let me say it to you this way. If I'm going to stop singing cha-cha songs, the only way I can stop singing a cha-cha song is by going to the heart of Atlanta and going to go find out what that sounds like. There's no other place that I'm going to be able to go that's going to graft me in, that's going to accept me, right? Besides going back to where the sound originates from. So I don't disagree with you at all. Yes, he went down there to get the sound because he did not organically have it.
But that's not hip hop. That's my point. Hip hop is stay your ass where you at and you use your cultural aesthetic to create your own shit, right? And that's for me, because I'm a Gen Xer and we have different,
From Toronto. Yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
blow this shit
well,
up from Toronto.
It's black people in Toronto has a cultural aesthetic. It is what, like a Caribbean, Afro Caribbean. You
That Drake doesn't fit in at
Yeah.
all. He
Oh
was
yeah,
better
that's what
off
I put. There you go. And so there
that
you
he
go.
doesn't. He was better off by going back. Let me say,
Exactly.
no. He was better off by going to Atlanta to go get this sound because his dad's in Memphis.
Take your ass. Oh, he did go to Memphis though. He did.
Yeah, he did. He
Mhm.
went to not only that. If you remember his album Marvin's Room, he uses all of the music that his dad was using. People have to remember that his dad was an artist, right? His
Right.
dad was a real artist that plays like 2 and 3 instruments, that was really into, here's what I'm saying. And so what I'm saying to you is that him going to Atlanta wasn't all of his own choice and on his own making.
What do
It
you
was
mean it's not his own choice? This is a
what
grown man we're
I'm going
talking
to tell you.
about.
I'm
Okay.
going to tell you. If
Thank you.
I go down, if my mother has kept me away from my father, and now I'm reconnecting, I've left Toronto, I'm reconnecting with my dad, and my dad is in Memphis, and my dad says, "Hey, go look up these producers, go look up the folks that I was dealing with down. They all now live in Atlanta now because all of them have now migrated, or all I may have done music with them here, but they all now live in Atlanta because, as you said, this is the Black Mecca. Go down there and see them and say that and tell them I sent you, right? I'm not saying that what you're saying is not true. I'm saying that we are acting like Drake decided that he picked a place on the map, chose it, and said he was going there. No, in many ways, he was directed and led there based upon his own history and his own history and his own searching for a sound that he knows he doesn't have.
What? Okay, and so this is what I'm saying. He went to Atlanta because that's where the opportunity was. I mean, you're going to a lot. Everybody went to Atlanta. You have a lot of people going to Atlanta because this is where you have the entertainment hub. And what I know about, the entertainment industry, and my thing is very peripheral. I don't know the whole entertainment industry all through and through. Is a lot of when Death Row was popping, what we know, people from the East Coast went to LA. So you tend to gravitate where the opportunity is. So I would say that he went not for a sound, but he went for an opportunity because the overall objective, this is my opinion, and just kind of understanding his movements, is not to be a part of hip hop as somebody who is contributing and participating as this organic um, artist who is cultivating themselves and in this collective. It was a money move, and I do believe that at some point he then represents the artist that then goes back and reports to somebody. I don't know who he's reporting to about the movements of individuals, and that's why.
And I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that, but I don't disagree with any of those points. But the idea that this again, this idea that hip hop is this homegrown MC thing anymore is not the case. It's just not how the industry works, and that is why Kendrick Lamar is so powerful in his positionality, because he is that. He harkens back to an era in hip hop where it was, you are who you are, you make the shit that you make the sound that you have pop where you are. You don't try to borrow and skip across to go to get an A&R rep that tells you what's the beat that's the most hottest, or the skips that play the most, right? That, to your very point, Drake is an industry baby. So in many ways he is getting it out the mud the way he knows from an industry perspective, the same way Kendrick is getting it out the mud in a way that he knows. They're getting it out the mud.
He an industry baby. He doesn't have to. He already has access. He is a Jewish man that has been in the entertainment industry. He has access that Kendrick Lamar did not have access to. And that's what it. So let's do that. And let me tell you, this is factually the way that Kendrick Lamar rhymes. He would not have made it as an LA rapper back in the 90s. Why? Because the entertainment industry would not sign a contract, because he would not fit into the mode of being a gangster rapper. You know what I'm saying?
But I guess that's my entire point about why Kendrick is now possible. What I'm saying is Kendrick is only possible because of a Drake. Kendrick
no. Okay.
Yes, what I'm saying is that the bar of what hip hop is, and the bar of what the industry has allowed, that is in many ways represented by Drake, is why Kendrick can come along and be presented as an alternative, because he is nothing like Kendrick. Kendrick Lamar is nothing like Drake, and he is nothing like the gangster rappers that come out of the geographical area he was in at the time. He is the alternative. He is presented as the alternative to a very whitewashed industry sound that is what Drake represents.
And let me say this for the record: this is not conspiratorial. This is fact. Hip hop is white controlled. It's ran by white money, and it's operated by white decisions. All right. Let me keep it very honest. My husband often tells this story, and I'm just gonna very kind of briefly tell it for him. My husband was actually an MC. He knows all. He's from Jersey, so he all these people from Jersey you see, he knows them all, because he's an MC in the golden era of hip hop. So he tells this story about how he had this opportunity to get signed. He has demos. He even has a mixtape with Savion Glover, the tap dancer dude, right? So anyway, he goes into the record company. I forgot who the guy's name is. Like some top DJs. As you get older, you tend to forget, right? So I mean, he had the dude who made Biggie's beat, made my husband's beats, but he goes into the office nonetheless, and they tell him, "You're good. We like your sound, blah, 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 blah. But we want you to be like Kill Army. We want you to be like some New York gangster shit. We don't want you to do like this conscious stuff." This was in the 90s, right? This was so if this is happening and he walked away from the deal, he could walk away from the deal because he has two supportive, parents, mom a teacher, father's a cop. So he could negotiate that. He went to Hampton, blah, 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 and all this other stuff, right? But for a lot of the people, they were like, this is all I have. So a lot of people allow themselves to be molded and sculpted and produce music that they would have never produced, even if they were in these circumstances. So I'm saying this to say that even though, and this is another thing I hate, that LA has a reputation of creating what you call gangster rap. For every quote unquote gangster rapper, there were probably 10 non-gangsters trying to rap and get out of there. But they did not fit what the industry felt like the world needed to think of what LA cultural aesthetic was, right? You can't have gangster rap and then LA had like the largest representation by numbers of Black Panthers. Where are the people? Where are the children for the Black Panthers? A lot of these children of Black Panthers, I'm going to school. I am one, right? So I'm going to school with them. You know what I'm saying? And these are people who are aspiring to do hip hop. So I want to say that too as well. So this whole industry made person is a product of years and years of grinding down this organic creativity from all types of Black kids in hip hop. And it just wasn't people in the projects. It was people from all types, from your reality, from everything. And it's a result of this understanding that if you want to be in this hip hop business, you have to do X, Y, X, Y, and Z. And that does not even exclude a Kendrick Lamar, right? So, and
But
I
that's
want,
But that's what I'm saying is that's why Kendrick Lamar is possible because of all of this grinding down that is represented in Drake, right? Drake is the representation of that. Because of this grinding down, because of this selection, because of this hand picking, because we decided that Drake is going to be the one that we back. He's going to be our horse because he's already been in the industry. We already have his mom subdued. His dad's out of the picture for all intents and purposes. He's going to be our horse. Well, because he's going to be your horse, you open the door to allow for a Kendrick Lamar. A Kendrick Lamar is only possible now because at some point, everybody starts sounding the same. So you got to have a Kendrick. You have to have a Kendrick so that there is some level of alternative to present. And I guess my problem with Kendrick is just because you got backed as the alternative doesn't make you any more pure than everybody else. You just got backed as the alternative. But there were plenty other people that got grinded down before you that then allowed for you to be in the spotlight that you're in. So for you to be rapping and dissing openly Drake when you got patted on the shoulder just for a different reason, to me is BS.
well, I don't think Kendrick presents himself or makes an argument that he's a purist. He's not necessarily. You have Kendrick is for the Kendrick is from a whole thing called the Black hippies, right? So I mean, this is a whole. And I'm serious. Like in LA, I remember when my brother called me a hippie. I was telling my sister this, right? To be Black and be a bohemian person in LA, in the hood is like, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about because everybody was banging. It was because LA in general has this whole glitz and glamoury and you know there's culture and stuff. So if
Superficial
so
bullshit. That's what I call it.
exactly. So it's like I come home. I remember I come home in '98, right? I'm coming home from FAMU. I come home in '98, and I had a short haircut. My father immediately thought I was gay. Then I went in. He was like, "Is you gay? Is you?" I was like, "No." You know what I'm saying? This is the hairstyle on the East Coast, right? When I grow my hair out, I grow my hair out with locks. All right. I was the only me and Lauren Hill at the time were the only person working in the entertainment industry that I knew of with locks. Right? Everybody had weaves, perms, and all this other stuff, whatever. So I'm saying that so to be a hip, and I was identified as a hipster. I have locks, you know what I'm saying? I'm bohemian, I'm a vegan at the time. I don't this is not the like normal typical Black LA aesthetic. It's very much gumbo, ribs, blues. This is like LA aesthetic. And I'm listening to world music and going to the reggae. Anyway, so Kendrick Lamar is part of this Black male, let's say this, Black male identity and aesthetic that doesn't fit gang culture, doesn't fit this hyper violent, hypersexual type of bravado that you often see. So
Which is why, Kaya, which to your very point, which is why he was blood adjacent because they saw that in him early on and they wanted to protect that in him. And what I guess I'm saying is that you got a level of protection. Your protection may have been different. Your grooming may have been different, But you and Drake have both been groomed. Y'all were groomed in different ways and protected in different ways. But both of you guys have been groomed and protected. And now the both of you guys, the nerve of either one of you guys to be setting diss tracks against one another when both of you guys have been handpicked is ridiculous to me.
Which goes briefly to the beef, because there's been a lot of discourse about the beef. I will put this on record. The beef was manufactured. It was a manufactured event. Boo boo for you who think it wasn't, because the industry is like that, media is like that, media systems are like that. If wars are created, hip hop beefs are created. That ain't nothing. So I want to say that, and sidebar, somewhere in the world, J. Cole is riding his bike in Soho. Okay, back to the message ahead.
But I guess that's my point. My point is that no matter what side this, we already knew that Kendrick was superior to Drake lyrically. We already knew that Kendrick was superior to Drake musically. What I'm saying is, you two have already been given favor in different ways and for different reasons. Do not then participate you've already gotten favor. Don't participate in this, and don't drag the rest of us into it because you guys are participating. Kendrick, you feeling some level of guilt about being able to get out of the hood and being able to be protected the way that you were protected as this hippie who was gang adjacent and could have died like many of the soldiers that you saw. Drake, you feel some level of guilt because you don't know who the hell you are. You running from your mama to your daddy, trying to figure out your identity, running all around the country, Houston, Atlanta, Vegas, sleeping with anything that'll sleep with you so you could try to then identify with yourself. Both of you guys go on, figure out who you guys are in your identity, and leave us out of it.
So let me go. Yes, but let me go to the things what I call are problematic with Kendrick Lamar. And we've had this conversation, is that Kendrick Lamar, during the Black Lives Matter moment, Kendrick Lamar's song "All Right" became the anthem, for that moment. And I used to, like, because I was out of during the pandemic, as you know, I wasn't in America. I was actually in Europe. And I would often say, well, where's Kendrick Lamar? Like, I would see all of these, artists be like, oh, what is this guy's name? The dude, "We Are All Different People," whatever that song is. John Legend sitting food trucks and water, and I forgot Will Smith's son sending water. All of these quote unquote celebrities are doing things during this moment. I said, where's Kendrick Lamar? He couldn't come to a pro. He couldn't come to a pro. His whole song has become a protest. And I am thinking about how, say it out loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. Like, all of these songs along the way that have become the scores and the backdrops to movements, how these musicians showed up, right? So this was years ago, my critique with Kendrick Lamar, being like this mystery man, right? And like, oh, I just want to create. Well, in America, I just want to profess. I just want to be a scholar, but we can't do that, can we? You know what I'm saying? I just want to walk outside my house and not get messed with. That's number one. Two, Kendrick Lamar is streamed through Amazon's Prime. How much money did Amazon make off of that Kendrick Lamar concert? Amazon has a history of exploitation of its labor. So why does Kendrick Lamar and his team make this decision to use one of the most exploitative companies in the world that has actually eroded the mom and pop shops of the very community he's coming from? Why does he perform and use that platform? And did he demand that any of that money go to those Black vulnerable communities in Los Angeles that are suffering from severe disenfranchisement? So we talked about gentrification. Homelessness is through the roof. I've been told that the homeless population, roughly about 50%, are Black people. Black people make up roughly about 12% of LA. So how are they 50% of the homeless population? You still have chronic issues with drug addiction, and you have, as you so aptly put it out, the fallout that happened as a result of years of crack addiction and police abuse. You have shattered families. You have sky high kids in the child protective services. Education is dismal. You have all of these issues. Kendrick, and the thing that you decide to do is bring Bloods and Crips on a stage. That's cool. But anyway, that's my LA coming out. I know you're not saying it. I was like, that's cool, but okay.
And I think that is where we should leave it, because that is ultimately my point. Both of them have been favored in different ways. And what are they doing with it?
And let me say this, the last time, and those weren't all the FYI for you people who on here talking about, and there's a lot of things I can't talk about. That was a minuscule representation of the gang factions in Los Angeles, the black ones, right? That's cool. I'm glad that you were able to have documented what Nipsey Hussle was doing before he died, because people knew Nipsey Hussle can go from Nickerson Gardens on the east side all the way to the Bloods in Inglewood, and he would, with all his gold, and he would be good. That's cool though. No, that's cool. I have to say that. But the last time it was done, a gangs coming together was after the 1992 riots. I was there, right? And the truce was disrupted because unknown people began to go into these different territories dressed like the feuding gang and would shoot shit and everything like that. And the gang truce was broken up. Later stories are suggesting that those people were dirty cops who had to break up the truce because it was messing up. This is allegedly messing up the flow of money with the crack that was flowing in the community. What we know decades later is that LAPD is one of the most corrupt organizations, and they have their own gangs. So I love the fact that you did that. Then you had a video taping and the following, because Black LA needs a win, and I'm happy, but understand that there is no struggle without progress. This is cool when that corporate money backs you. When you don't have that corporate money, let the work really begin. And I'm a throw up the pot. Hey.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build. Let's shine, yeah.